The great advantage of the new technology in terms of sustainability, like reverse osmosis, is the fact that they are electrically driven, not steam driven.
Welcome to a new episode of the Sustainability Action Podcast. Today I speak to Corrado Sommariva, CEO and founder of SWPC. We talk about water desalination, energy generation and wastewater treatment, and how those can support the transition to net zero. Welcome. Today we're talking to Corrado Sommariva, CEO and founder of Sustainable Water and Power Consultants. And I would like to start by asking you a little bit about your background and how you became so passionate about water and energy.
Well, this story is quite long. It brings me back to the time of the university, which was 1980 in Italy and Europe. Europe was extremely polluted at that time. It was a industrial hub like it is now China. And all the rivers were eutrophicated. So I subscribed and started entering into the chemical engineering at Genoa University because my dream was to clean or to find a way to clean all the rivers of the world. And then at that time I started working for an Italian company, Italian Pian, who was specialized in water treatment, but also desalination. And then I started coming in the UAE. So my first visit to the UAE was in 1987.
Oh, that's
and
quite
I
a while.
became a resident of the United Arab Emirates since 1994. So it's a very, very long time.
So since that time you've been in water desalination predominantly in the beginning?
Water desalination and water treatment plant, yes,
Okay.
mainly. And sometimes power generation, that's correct.
So water desalination is a big topic in the UAE. Can you tell us a little bit more about how it works, what it does, the benefits of it, especially here for the UAE?
Well, desalination basically takes streams from water or wastewater or brackish water or industrial water that has a salt which is higher than the concentration which is allowed by the drinking standards, remove these salts various methods. Originally they were thermal methods, so now there are membrane methods. Dispose the brine back to the environment and then takes the purified stream, which is basically a stream that has no salt contents into it. That stream is not potable yet, so that goes into a process of further potabilizations by adding some alkalis and sterilization of the media. This is a technology that was basically in the original period in 1980, 1990, was a thermal desalination technology that was extremely environmentally unfriendly. Because the energy footprint to get 1 meter cube of water was 20 to 40 kilowatt hour. Now advances in the state of the art has brought the technology to go to new technologies like reverse osmosis. And to give you an idea, 1 meter cube of potable water produced by reverse osmosis now demands only 3 kilowatt hour per meter. So we're talking about one order of magnitude almost.
So traditionally, what type of energy would be used for the thermal desalination?
Basically, steam. The steam was associated to a cogeneration system. So you had a power plant and a bottom-in desalination system that was taking steam for the power plant to drive a thermal separation, which was basically a distillation process of the seawater. That was trying to mimicking what happens in nature, but with much higher energy consumption.
So now you're saying reverse osmosis is the new approach and the better approach, as it seems?
Yeah, reverse osmosis passes seawater through a number of semi-permeable membranes. So basically, the permeates is the fresh water, and the brine is rejected as a retentate from the membranes. In order to pass the water through the membranes, there is a number of pre-treatment because the membranes are not fit to handle water with high suspended solid or with high biofouling issues. So the water is pre-treated to get through the membranes. Because of this, clearly the environmental impact is much lower. To give you an idea, to produce 1 meter cube of fresh water with a thermal desalination, so you need a 10 to 15 meter cube of seawater. To produce 1 meter cube of fresh water with reverse osmosis, you need only 3 cubic meters of
so that's
fresh
a big
water.
difference.
So that's a big difference.
So then I would assume there's also a cost difference.
Oh yes, very much. Give you an idea, the first desalination plant, the cost was per meter cube was $1.5 per meter cube, whereas now you get projects like Tawila or Hassian where the cost goes below 0.5 US dollar per meter cube. And considering that the energy cost in this tariff, in overall cost of water, is typically 50%, the energy component becomes very important. And the great advantage of the new technology in terms of sustainability, like reverse osmosis, is the fact that they are electrically driven, not steam driven. And UAE has wisely invested in gigawatt of solar PV. So the energy produced by the solar PV can be directly used as a grid connected to produce water from desalination with reverse osmosis without passing to the thermodynamic circle of burning fuel, producing steam, and then using the steam to distillate water.
So in addition to being more environmentally friendly,
requiring less energy,
and you can use renewable energy for it.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about how this could help the UAE get to net zero.
Well, actually, the UAE had to do with desalination, because without desalination there wouldn't be life or industry here in this part of the region. So, therefore, the UAE, like all the GCC, had a large fleet of thermal desalination plants. The United Arab Emirates, the Abu Dhabi Emirates, and through a declaration of done at the last year World Energy Summit, declared that as of January 2022 they will start retiring all the thermal desalination plants. Considering that actually all the thermal desalination plants are going to be retired and substituted with state-of-the-art reverse osmosis plants. So considering the amount of water produced by the Abu Dhabi and by EWEC as a thermal desalination plant, it is in the range of 600 million gallons. That means an inherent energy requirement of 2,000 megawatt. So 2 gigawatt of energy only to produce that water. That will become only 300, 400 if you use state-of-the-art reverse osmosis. So this is an incredible saving in terms of energy, and if you consider that basically a saving of 1.5 to 2 gigawatt of energy would correspond, considering that A3 takes say 20 kilograms of CO2 off from the atmosphere, to the work that a forest of 500 million trees would do in terms of segregating energy from the atmosphere. So that is the first step that has been already committed to by Abu Dhabi. Dubai, DIWA, is wisely doing the same thing. They had a big fleet of thermal desalination plants. They are gradually retiring this, and they are now substituting this fleet with reverse osmosis plant. My company has just worked on a fantastic project. It was the Pound Jumeirah reverse osmosis plant. This, to give you an idea, if you go to the Atlantis, you look on your left, and then you will see a building, but inside the building you won't notice anything. This doesn't look like an industrial building. It just looks like a shopping mall, and inside there is a desalination plant. It has no nuisance to the environment, and produces small quantity, only 8 MIGD, 7 MIGD, but now has been refurbished, and through the refurbishment, DY is able to produce water with 1 megawatt less of electricity, and then that electricity can come from the grid. So all of these activities of energy efficiency, energy improvement can create really a positive momentum in terms of decreasing the energy consumption and energy intensity of the desalination.
So if I understand correctly, there will be a substantial reduction in emissions by changing that technology. Can the existing thermal desalination plants be refurbished or reused, or do they have to be retired completely and new plants have to be built?
That's a very important question, in fact, because these plants are capital intensive. Some of the desalination plants, in order to recover the initial investment, you have to run it for at least 25 years.
Okay.
Some of these plants have still been working for 40 years, but with energy benchmark, which were extremely poor. The problem happened that some countries, not UAE, thanks God, because technologically they are already very advanced, but other countries in the GCC invested in thermal desalination 5-6 years ago. And therefore they have now fleet of thermal desalination that are obsolete, but cannot be commercially retired. Because they're still long. So that is the big conundrum. But yeah, the idea would be to retire them or to put them in standby in case of emergency, because it's not possible to refurbish or to increase the efficiency to considering a range of 1 order of magnitude almost.
Because the technology doesn't allow for that, right? So they'll have to move to the reverse osmosis for that.
That's correct.
And then how does wastewater treatment play a role in energy generation, and what else can it offer us?
Yeah, wastewater is a big topic, particularly in this country, because wastewater is always considered as a nuisance to get rid of at minimum cost, whatever it is, the possibility, regardless of the possibility that wastewater can offer. And the paradox, not only in the UAE but worldwide, is that we spend a lot of energy to kill the residual energy there is in the wastewater streams. But now we start considering the wastewater rather than a resource, rather than a nuisance to get rid of. And particularly in Europe now, they are starting producing plants that are not longer utility to treat the wastewater and discharge them into the environment, the treated effluent, but to use the energy, residual energy that is in the wastewater to produce energy, like in the form of biogas and nutrients in sort of phosphorus and nitrogen that can be basically sent back to the atmosphere. To give you an idea, in terms of really small, in terms of energy benchmark, to treat 1 meter cube of wastewater today, we spend 1 kilowatt hour. 1 to 0.5 kilowatt hour, depends on to the extent that this wastewater is treated. Theoretically, and in many cases in Europe this is done, treating 1 meter cube of wastewater could give 0.2 kilowatt hour of energy back to the network, plus the struvite, for instance, which is a fertilizer, plus other nutrients that can be recovered. So this is an enormous change in perceptions if you consider that you don't have to treat the wastewater anymore like in utilities and discharge it back to the sea, but you can treat it as as a resource.
So
the other advantage is the cradle-to-cradle cycle. If you now consider the way wastewater is treated, the treated sewage effluent is basically discharged back to the sea, at least for 50%. There are some policies now that encourage the reuse. But that treated sewage effluent is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus. Therefore, you have an eutrophication of the seawater, which brings about algae bloom or jellyfish, which in turn requires more expensive and more energy-intensive desalination pretreatment, like the solvent flotation. So this is a vicious cycle.
Yes.
If we can stop that one and use the treated water for irrigation, simply watering guff trees, then the contribution to sustainability would be enormous, because Abu Dhabi or the UAE produce 1 billion meter cube of treated sewage effluents every year. So if all these could be used, then you could, for planting trees, just simply for planting trees, and you can create a forest of 500 million trees, and that would segregate from the atmosphere another big chunk. So I believe that the water sector could go below net zero much before 2050 if all these right policies could be done.
So it's interesting that it's now discarded into the sea where it's actually not beneficial, whereas it could be used for trees where it is beneficial, because it's considered a fertilizer, right? To
that extent, anyhow, the government of the UAE has set up a number of policies for beneficial use of treated effluent for industrial use, for agriculture, for gardening and landscaping. But still, obviously, it is required that a network to recycle that treated sewage effluent. It is required to have a system that whereby this treated sewage effluent is priced correctly. But the principles are there, so I see that in the future this will happen, and will bring a big benefit. Both in terms financially, but yes, most importantly in terms of sustainable development.
One little side question I have to that: what are your thoughts on the trucks transporting the sewage water to the plant?
Oh, that's another topic, and this is due to the fact that, again, we're thinking about a little bit big centralized wastewater treatment plant, and therefore you have to go and truck all the sewage
long distance, right?
Long distance to that to convey to this. Doesn't have to work like that. For instance, Singapore, but also Dubai. If you go to Atlantis, close to the desalination plant, there was a municipal wastewater treatment plant that was basically designed to treat all the wastewater that is in the district.
Okay.
So if we could move away from the centralized idea that you have to have one big wastewater treatment plant that serves all the Emirates, we can have a smaller, decentralized wastewater treatment plant. Then the idea of the tankers, the idea of this one will go away. And then we will have a basically cradle-to-cradle system that is the key for
so more community-focused, everything around the community, within the community. Would that be cost-efficient, though?
In terms of cost, yes, definitely, because you will cut down all the transmission and distribution, transportation costs. In terms of reliability, of course, that's the main important. You need still to have a backup in case a small plant doesn't work. You don't want that particular district to suffer. But this can be considered with appropriate redundancy measures, and I believe this is going to be the way. Even for the desalination plant, you are now from a residence in Dubai, so you stay in Atlantis. You see on your right-hand side beautiful Dubai, and you see on your left-hand side the Jebel Ali with 20 kilometers strip of desalination plant. So you can imagine what would be if that desalination plant could be moved inside the residential building, looking like as I say, Palm Jumeirah desalination plant, and all the power generation could be done inland with solar PV. All that area would be recovered, bringing new visions for the Emirates, and then clearly from the environmental point of view, there would be a tremendous benefit as well.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. That makes a lot of sense, and I think I'm glad that the UAE is already thinking along those lines and having those plans in place to move in that direction.
I think we are very fortunate here because the leadership has been extremely sensitive and one of the pioneers in promoting sustainability.
Fantastic. So can you tell me a little bit about your book?
The book was published in 2018, and what the part of the book that I believe it is new or of particular interest, at least to me, is that we can consider the planet as a battery, or as you want maybe to consider as an enormous reactor where components are getting oxidized and reduced, and based on this number of reactions, the battery gets high or gets low. Now, obviously, the batteries get low because...
Very, yes.
But the idea of sustainability, which is we are sustainable when we do not introduce into the environment pollutants to the rate or to a velocity or to a rate which is higher than the environment can get rid of them, can be also considered somehow a limitations, because so far, at least until 200 years ago, the start of the environmental revolutions, the environment was removing pollutants at a rate higher than we were introducing. So we were in a state of abundance. So we were charging the battery. And so I want to think that this is a message also for us as a legacy to leave to our children. We want to leave a charged battery rather than a depleted battery. And therefore we should go beyond sustainability. We should go, and that's the title of the book, to a state of abundance where we start of getting rid of all these oxidized pollutants and products and get and basically charge the battery.
So you're saying the approach is really reducing what we're currently putting out there into the environment and coming up with innovative solutions to continue enjoying the kind of like benefits and lifestyle that we have.
Yes, and now we were thinking of I like being in the countryside. Despite I was growing, I grew up in the city. For 3 months I was going in the countryside, more or less like a redneck. I consider myself. And now there is nothing that prevents you to enjoy all the benefits of living in the countryside or in the wilderness, even. And at the same time enjoying high level of education, high level of medical service, high level of communication with others. There's no more that idea that if you live in the countryside, you are somehow rejected from the normal society because you have poor access to education and to medical service. Now all these things can change, and we can both enjoy the beauty of what technology can offer us, at the same time the beauty of the nature.
Yes, indeed. That sounds great. So, as a last question to you, when we talk about water desalination, wastewater treatment, these are big topics that are predominantly on the government level. What can companies do to think along those lines, or to work towards this, or to support these topics, and also relook at their consumption maybe, or anything that they could potentially do?
Company means private sector.
Yes.
This is a message, I think, for the policymaker. When they do the right policy, industry can follow. There's nothing that industry cannot do. Give you an example. I worked for the Saudi Water Partnership Company 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, the state-of-the-art of reverse osmosis was 5 kilowatt-hour per meter cube. There was a policy that courageously has been taken by the Saudi Water Partnership Company and saying we will not accept any bid from any partner in the industry unless the energy consumption is lower than 3.5 kilowatt-hour per meter cube. Okay. That was quite revolutionary, and industry at the beginning resisted many. They said that they couldn't do. They received 5 bids, all of them 3.4, 3.2 kilowatt-hour per meter cube, and now the energy consumption, as I mentioned, is below 3. So it means that policymaker needs to be courageous, because if they are courageous, the private sector will always follow suit.
And solutions can be found, as this example gives away.
There's a lot of positive messages that the industry can bring, and often they are not they're not conveyed to the public, but yes, really there's a number of positive initiatives that can be used as a model.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank
Most
you very
welcome.
much for your
Thank
time
you for
today.
having me.
Thank you for teaching us so much about these topics. And I think I'm an optimist. I believe that changes can be made and solutions are available. So this is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.